In progress.
Bring toward the Planning Commission for the City of Monterey, Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. Where do we go from here? Can we have a roll call to see if
Sure.
anybody's here?
Chair Dawson,
Here.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Here.
Commissioner Brassfield, Commissioner Fletcher,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Latassa,
Here.
and Commissioner Silva has let us know that he will be absent. And I can go ahead and announce the staff members present. We have Planning Manager Levi Hill. We have City Attorney Christy Davi. We have our Senior Associate Planner Chris Schmidt, myself, Recording Secretary Erica Barrera, and Recording Secretary Spencer Argenbright.
You want to go over procedures for calling in?
Sure. I can announce how to join via Zoom. Members of the public are encouraged to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, a secure service that connects you live with no lag time. To join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Today's webinar ID is 161-990-8039. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. Please turn off TV or computer speakers or go to another room while connected, as background noise interferes with the broadcast. Public speakers will be called upon in order of hands raised. There is a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting. Please stay within that limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Now is the opportunity for anyone in the audience or on the internet to make a comment on something that's not on our agenda today. But is
Actually-
within the purview.
Actually, Chair, first we would do the consent agenda before moving to public comment.
Say what?
We would address the consent agenda before moving to comments on not agendized items.
Okay, so let's go item number 1. No, that's, yeah, item number 1, consent agenda. Is there anyone making a comment about the minutes from October, from November 14th? No. Not even Mike? I guess not. Okay, can I have a
We'll
Motion.
check to see if there's a public comment on the consent agenda first.
I don't see any hands raised online, and it doesn't appear there's anyone in the chambers that would like to provide comment.
Thank you.
okay, so I still need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A second for Dan. Roll call, please.
Sure. Chair Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Fletcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman. Okay, I'll go ahead and mark you as abstained, and Commissioner Latassa.
Yes.
All right, the consent agenda has been approved.
Okay, now we can get to the public comments of anything that is not on our agenda and is within our purview. Anyone?
I still see no hands raised online.
Hands raised. Okay, so let's move on from there to item number 3. Read this. Consider and approve 2101 North Fremont Street Hotel. 1, use permit UP 20-0227 to demolish an existing 18-room hotel, restaurant, and parking lot, and construct a new 42-room hotel and parking lot and off-street loading space. Adopt text amendments with clarifying language in the North Fremont specific plan and amendments to Monterey City Code Charter 38. Related to visitor accommodation facility parking standards 38-36A, off-street parking and loading standards 38-115, and reduced parking for other uses 38-117. And 3, certify environmental impact report prepared for project in accordance with SEQA Article 7, Section 15090, visitor accommodation facility zoning district, commercial general plan, land use designation. Can we have a staff report on this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name is Chris Schmidt. I'm the Senior Associate Planner for the City of Monterey. I've been working on this project with the project applicant and the city's consultants for quite some time now. So yes, we're looking at a project that the Planning Commission is familiar with. This is a hotel project. There's an existing hotel proposed to be demolished and replaced with a new hotel. In addition to that, we have text amendments and the project requires a use permit approval and certification of an environmental impact report. So to start, the staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt resolutions recommending the City Council certify the EIR, approve the specific plan and zoning code text amendments, and approve the use permit for the hotel and reduce loading space requirement. So to go into some of the background information, we'll start with the project description. So as I stated, this is a demolition of an existing one-story 18-room hotel and 134-seat restaurant. That's the Casa Verde Inn and Caruso's Corner restaurant. To make way for the construction of a 4-story, 42-guest room branded hotel, the Avid Hotel, a 42-space parking lot with 1 loading space. And in addition to that, we have text amendments to the North Fremont specific plan and zoning ordinance. So going back to 2021, when the Planning Commission first saw this project, the Planning Commission reviewed this project. It involved a similar scope, a use permit for the hotel and reduced loading zone requirement, as well as this at that time, the city had prepared a mitigated negative declaration. That was approved by the Planning Commission on October 12th, and it was subsequently appealed by the neighboring property owners on the 22nd. Because the neighboring property owners brought new information into the record from their consultants, the city staff proposed that an EIR be prepared in response to that appeal. So the environmental impact report, or EIR. So just noting a couple of dates here, the notice of preparation review period began in June 24th of 2022 and ended in July on July 25th. The city received comments from 5 different agencies and 1 Native American tribe. These were just general kind of scoping comments. And then the draft EIR was completed in 2023 and circulated for public review. This is a 45-day review period, which was circulated from July 7th through August 21st, 2023. The city received 2 comments from Fenton and Keller, a law firm on behalf of the Maroon family, the neighboring property owners to the north, as well as the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And so before I speak to the EIR in a little bit more detail, I want to give some more background information on the project site, just as a reminder to the commission and the public. So it is zoned VAF, which is the city's visitor accommodation facility. Generally, this zoning is for hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, visitor serving uses. And it is zoned, it has a general plan designation of commercial. And as I mentioned, there's an existing 18-room hotel and restaurant. It's located at the corner of Casa Verde Way and North Fremont Street. And here you can see, and I'm sorry, the text is fairly small, but this is kind of a surrounding area map that shows the project site highlighted in yellow. You see the neighboring apartments to the north, the Maroon apartments, and then surrounding land uses include residential to the north, a gas station to the west, general commercial to the southwest. There's retail and office uses, medical office uses. Another hotel to the south. There's a nightclub and an adult bookstore, as well as other hotel uses on the south side and also on the east side. Offices are directly east of the project site, as well as a restaurant. And so here's the project site plan. Just a few things I highlighted here is just that, it's, as I mentioned, it's located at the street corner for Casa Verde and North Fremont Street. The hotel entrance is fairly close to the corner itself. And then there would be 2 driveway entrances to the parking lot, both on the North Fremont frontage and Casa Verde Way frontage. And then I do have a summary of the project versus the existing condition, just to highlight kind of the main differences. So we would see a decrease in building lot coverage. There would be an increase in height from the existing condition at its peak of the existing hotel is about 20 feet. The new hotel at its peak would be 40 feet from the lowest grade. From the North Fremont Street side, the existing building is about 12 feet, and the new hotel would appear to be 35 feet from North Fremont. An increase from 18 to 42 rooms, an increase of parking spaces from 32 to 42 spaces. Impervious surface would slightly decrease by about 2.5%, and then landscaping would increase by 2.5%. So this is a Google image of the street view from North Fremont Street of the existing site. And then I'll go into the rendering. So this is at the corner of Casa Verde Way and North Fremont Street. This is the north side, kind of along the Casa Verde Way sidewalk frontage. This is the east side along North Fremont Street. And then that's kind of a similar vantage looking towards that North Fremont driveway entrance. And you can see those apartments in the background there. This is a view adjacent to the apartments, looking at the north elevation of the hotel. And then this is a view of the Casa Verde Way driveway entrance. So back to the EIR. So when an EIR is circulated, it gives an opportunity for the public to comment on the EIR. So the city did receive, as I mentioned, 2 comments on the draft EIR. The first from Derek Oliver of Fenton and Keller on behalf of the Maroon family. And Mr. Oliver brought up many of the same issues that he had brought up to the Planning Commission in the past. General opposition of the project with reasons related to noise, height, parking, safety, traffic, and water. In addition, the Department of Fish and Wildlife provided a comment and simply was stating that the mitigation was sufficient. So the EIR identifies that the project could result in potentially significant impacts with cultural resources, paleontological resources, hazards and hazardous materials, noise, and tribal cultural resources. Mitigation measures, when incorporated, would reduce all potential impacts to less than significant level. So I will go through those mitigations. So starting with cultural resources. So what we look at when we're looking at analysis of cultural resources is the potential for resources, including historical, archaeological, things like human remains, paleontological, things like fossils. And then we also will, in a separate section of the EIR, look at tribal cultural resources. And I think what I wanted to state here is this is a site that has been completely developed with an existing hotel. It is almost near 90% lot coverage with either asphalt or hotel. So it's a site that has obviously been developed and filled when it was developed. So in that regard, the project archaeologists found no evidence that there would be any sort of cultural resources found on the site. However, in an abundance of caution, we have included mitigation measures to reduce the impact of unanticipated discovery to a less than significant level. So what these two we have listed here are starting with the Worker Environmental Awareness Program is generally a training for the construction staff on how to identify these resources, in which case if they are found, there's a separate procedure in the event there's an unanticipated discovery of cultural resources. So these are these two mitigation measures. Likewise, the same would be required for ontological resources, a training on how to identify those resources, and then a procedure in place if those resources are found at the site. So moving on to the hazards and hazardous materials section. The key point here is that this is a building that was first constructed in the 1940s and had been renovated over time through the 50s, 60s, and 80s and into the 2000s. This is a time period where certain construction materials were used that could pose as hazardous during the demolition of the existing building. So this mitigation measure would require testing and abatement for asbestos, lead, mercury, and PCB caulk. And that would have to be done prior to the project building permit is issued. Excuse me, demolition. Noise. So here, what we're looking at is both operational and construction noise. So it's worth noting that the EIR did find that operational noise would result in a less than significant impact. However, the EIR does require mitigation measures for construction and construction noise and vibration. So what we have here are control plans that include things like a temporary sound barrier, specific construction hours. Those hours and days are posted at the site. Notification would be provided to surrounding neighbors in terms of when certain phases of work would be done. High noise equipment would be located away from sensitive receptors. Sensitive receptors are things like the neighboring apartments or schools, those types of things. Equipment would be required to have the appropriate sound mitigation, like mufflers. Idled equipment is discouraged near sensitive receptors and is required to be idling for a maximum of 5 minutes. And then also the project will require an on-site noise and vibration coordinator. That's someone on the construction staff who can take complaints from the surrounding neighborhood about things like work outside of operation, work outside of construction hours, et cetera. In that same light, for vibration, the control plans would require things like earthwork or highly impactful operation be phased in staggered times. Certain equipment has to be used at certain distances from property lines to mitigate vibration impacts to the surrounding properties. Trucks should be routed away from residential neighborhoods. And then also scheduling, surrounding neighbors have to be notified of the project phasing schedule, similar to noise related scheduling. And then tribal cultural resources. So I did note this is a similar mitigation, but it's specific to tribal cultural resources where if any sort of tribal related cultural resources are discovered, a project archaeologist is involved and would consult with a Native American tribe representative in the event that something is found. So in summary, the project mitigation measures would reduce all potential impacts to less than significant levels. So moving on to the clarifying text amendments. So the proposed amendments would provide additional clarity as to the applicability of the North Fremont specific plan and the various provisions of the zoning ordinance. So they're not substantive changes that are being proposed today, and I'll go into the detail there. Before I go into that detail, I wanted to give a little bit of background on the VAF zone. So as I previously mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the VAF zone, VAF stands for Visitor Accommodation Facilities. It's our district for hotels, motels, and bed and breakfasts. This was established by the charter by voter initiative, I believe in 1986. It creates the zoning standards for the VAF for these types of facilities. And it is the governing document for the VAF zone properties. So the text amendments to the North Fremont specific plan. Again, these are clarifying text amendments, and they kind of go into two parts. The VAF zone, basically stating that the VAF zone requirements for VAF properties apply as required by the charter, and rather than the specific plan development objectives, standards, and guidelines. So here for the site, the VAF standards apply. This would be the change to the specific plan. And then the second part is that stating that the specific plan is a tool to implement, but is not part of the general plan. Moving on to the zoning ordinance amendments. So the same language would be added, and I've added underlined that language here, basically stating that the parking requirement for hotels and motels is 1 per guest room plus 2 for every 50 rooms. Specifically, the change here for hotels and motels with over 49 rooms. Plus parking as required for accessory uses. There's no accessory use as that's being proposed for this project today. In addition to the parking clarifications, there's additional clarification language added to section 38-117. This is a section that is titled Reduce Parking for Other Uses. And basically the change here is to clarify that the section can be applied to both parking and loading spaces, as well as changes can be made to the required number and specifically size being changed here. Okay, so moving on to the findings for approval for the use permit. The first finding is that the proposed use is in accord with the objectives of this chapter and the purposes of the zone. The staff response is that the proposal meets the requirements of the charter and the VAF zone. The project includes a number of guest rooms, stories, required parking, lot coverage, required setbacks, and siting that is all consistent with the requirements of the zone and the charter, and that the project is not subject to the North Fremont specific plan requirements. The second finding is that the proposed use and the proposed conditions under which it would be operated or maintained will be consistent with the general plan, will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of persons residing or working in or adjacent to the neighborhood of such use, and will not be detrimental to properties or improvements in the vicinity or to the general welfare of the city. And before I provide the staff response, I wanted to note a couple of general plan policies specifically from the economic element, starting with program B52, which states encourage added hotel rooms within the limits of the VAF zoning in order to increase transient occupancy tax revenues, and program B53 encourage hotel owners to upgrade facilities. So the response here is that the project is consistent with the general plan and surrounding development. It is a commercial land use. The site has a commercial land use designation, and the proposal is consistent with the allowed land use. The project is consistent with the economic element policies, which I've just stated, and the project will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. This is a substantial upgrade from the current condition. There would be an increased separation between the adjacent residential uses and all other uses as compared to the current hotel. The project includes new landscaping and a screen wall, which does protect privacy, aesthetics, and noise. And the third finding is that the proposed use will comply with any specific condition required for that use. The project will be required to comply with all conditions and mitigations. And then what was also part of the project discussion years ago was due to neighborhood and business input, a condition was recommended to grant an easement to the city for pedestrian sidewalk use on the west side of the property. And then as part of the use permit approval, the project does include a reduced loading zone standard request. So you can see that loading zone here. I've highlighted it in red. And this section, Monterey City Code 38-117, reduced parking requirements, allows the Planning Commission to approve less than standard number of parking and or loading spaces. So the way that the findings work for this section is finding A must be made and either B or C. And in this case, the staff was able to make finding A and B. So starting with A, the parking demand will be less than the requirement in Schedule A or B. In this case, Schedule B is what applies to loading. And in the record, we have correspondence from the hotel brand owner stating that large or frequent deliveries are not anticipated for a select service hotel such as this one. Deliveries would be limited to pre-packaged food and snacks and other sundries. These are typically going to be UPS or FedEx type deliveries, not those necessitating large kind of semi vehicles that will need a large loading bay. And so loading zone, and then lastly, loading zones are typically not required and have been waived in the past at some similar select service hotels, and they didn't list specific hotels and other jurisdictions throughout the state of California that they received that waiver for. Finding B, the probable long-term occupancy of the building or structure based on its design will not generate additional parking demand. The floor plan is designed for a limited service hotel. There are no restaurants or gyms or retail shops that are open to the public. Anything on site is to be used by customers or guests. No other uses on site would generate additional parking demand, and that the city code requires that would require additional parking loading spaces if new uses or building modifications are proposed in the future. And I did want to mention there's a condition that the staff is recommending today that was not in the packet. On page 180 of the EIR, the final EIR, there was a minor typo, and I've highlighted it here. The staff is just recommending we add the word "not" to this section because there was, and I'll read it out loud. As discussed in sections 4.1 and 4.5, the project would not result in a considerable contribution to cumulative impacts to cultural and tribal cultural resources. And that's consistent with the findings of the EIR. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolutions recommending the City Council certify the EIR, approve the specific plan and zoning code text amendments, and approve the use permit for the hotel and reduce loading space requirement. I'm available for questions. Our CEQA consultants are here as well. The applicant is here, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have questions for staff? Harry.
I have just a few things, Chris. So the Fenton Keller letter that originally sort of sparked this EIR action, two of the items were safety and water, in addition to traffic and other ones. So I was curious, I guess safety is the, like the asbestos and that sort of thing. Is that what they mean by safety?
No, and I'm sorry, one last thing to note is I will say that the staff did receive public comment from the Maroon family requesting to postpone this hearing, and I believe their representatives are here today. But to answer your question, I think the specific thing that was called out in the original comment letters was there was a question of whether the sidewalk improvements could be designed safely. And so there was a portion at the corner where I believe the grades were fairly steep and they would have to do more civil engineering work to get it to a point where it would be something that the city could allow at that corner. And so that tied in with some of the easement improvements that we would also require to allow for more pedestrian safety. Yeah.
So in the city's opinion, that sidewalk issue was satisfied.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about water? Were they just, what was that Fenton Keller letter questioning the the water credits available for the project, or what was the water issue?
Yeah, I think it was just questioning whether this project would be allowed in terms of local water regulations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there was a letter to Dave in the, I forget what they're called, but they're sort of late arrival correspondence. I think his name was Park, on noise issues, recommending a east sort of a noise barrier. So did you see that letter?
I did, and yeah, I can clarify on the site plan here, what was actually, I have it open. If you give me one moment. So, Mr. Pack's recommendation was to extend the already proposed barrier to this east side here towards this commercial office building here, and both the staff and the applicant don't have any, as I understand it, don't have any issue with doing that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and would that likely today result in some sort of a consent condition or a modified condition?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. That's all I know.
Sandy?
Yeah, I have one quick question. I want to be clear on the numbers. The number of parking spaces seems to be an issue. Number of parking spaces plus loading area seems to be an issue. Is the request to maintain 42 spaces? And those 42 spaces are inclusive of the,
Give
oh
the
yeah,
microphone.
okay, no problem.
Could you start that over?
Yes. Are the 42 spaces dedicated to parking inclusive of the loading area? Or does the loading area occupy such space that it would be part of the 42 spaces?
42 would not include the loading space. So if you were to include the loading space, there would be 43.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike?
First of all, thanks, Chris, for the presentation. I didn't note among all the material if we had handicap parking slots in the parking.
It is a requirement.
I didn't see them on the illustration. That's why I guess I'm asking. So how many would that be? 2, 1?
I don't know off the top of my head.
But-
It's a building code requirement. I definitely know I've seen them on the drawings. I don't know if it was
Okay.
2 or 3.
It's a ratio based on the total amount of parking. So
sorry?
it's a ratio based on the total amount of parking.
I understand
provided.
that, but I'm just,
But it would be required per building code.
okay. On the water issue, and this comes up because North Fremont, when we get significant rain floods. Now, I've never seen flooding at that intersection because of the downhill.
Yeah.
But I question, is there going to be any drainage capability in the parking lot coming from the parking lot to the sidewalk on Casa Verde?
So
Because it's all downhill.
your concern is stormwater from the lot to,
Well, with the
opposite.
requirement of the state that you have to keep your water on your lot.
yeah, so the project does require a stormwater control plan. Typically, those requirements include things to encourage more on-site percolation or storage to allow percolation. So in the case of this project,
We'll get to that.
yeah, I think that they do have, if I recall correctly, through the center aisle of the north side of the parking lot, through the drive aisle, they do have stormwater containment basins that are supposed to allow slower percolation. Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know the total square footage of the roof, but I saw that there's a 965 cubic foot basin capability. Now going through 4-inch drainage lines from that roof. Well, at 965 cubic feet, that's at, I think it's about 7.5 gallons per cubic foot. That would be about 7,200 cubic feet. Now, I've been living in that neighborhood for almost half a century. And I've seen 1 inch of rain in 7 hours. I don't know not knowing what the total capability of that roof drainage into that 965 cubic foot drainage, is it going to be capable? I think is my question. And does anyone from the city staff examine that for that reason?
Yes, so the engineering division does review all of our stormwater control plans, and at the planning stage, the applicants are required to do preliminary control plans. There's a much more extensive plan requirement at the building permit stage. These projects are supposed to be consistent with state law requirements, and they're basically tiered based on the size of the project, based on the amount of new impervious surface that's proposed. And so based on however much there is, they'll have to design a system that complies with what the state requirement is.
Next is a great history here. Those of us who have lived in the area know that it's gratifying to see that someone's documenting it. You mentioned in here the jobs. I think it's 5 plus 25 offsite. Do we know what the employment was on that site prior to this project?
I don't know.
Well, it said there was a restaurant, housekeepers, and not in here, but previously the business. So we're not adding a net increase of employees to the city. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's worth noting that the existing restaurant and hotel are not operating currently. So based
Well,
on the
it
existing
hasn't been
conditions, I think it
operating.
would be considered a net increase.
But it sounded like that was and net increase of employees with this project. And I'm just pointing out that I didn't see anything that sustains that. So, I think I have enough. Thanks.
Would the applicant like to have a word
Or two.
or two?
Afternoon, Chair Dawson, members of the commission, Anthony Lombardo. Last time I was here on this project, it was October of 21. It's exactly the same project, exactly the same location, exactly the same environmental conclusion. At the time, the city had prepared a negative declaration, which concluded there were no significant unmitigated environmental effects. Staff pointed out, because of the proclivity of the California Environmental Quality Act to spawn litigation, oftentimes groundless litigation, but because the legal bar is so low to challenge an approval on a negative declaration, and because the one opponent had a noise consultant who disagreed with the city's conclusion, the city was faced with the unfortunate decision of whether to go forward and risk being sued at a very low bar and having the project overturned and starting an EIR now, basically, or stopping the process and doing an EIR and then coming back. The city chose, well, I'd say maybe fortunately and unfortunately, the correct legal decision, which was to stop everything on this project, stop the first project to revitalize North Fremont and do the EIR. So 2 years later, here we are. The unfortunate part, the fortunate part is, I'll start with the fortunate part, is that I don't think I've seen a better EIR in a long time. The city staff and their consultants and their counsel and their outside counsel did an absolutely sterling job preparing this environmental impact report, incredibly thorough, and it addresses, as Mr. Schmidt said, some of the other issues raised by the opponents, which was the discrepancy between the city codes section on VAF zoning, which of course was adopted by initiative, and the North Fremont specific plan, which could not overturn the adopted language in the VAF zoning. So now the city, as a part of this project, is resolving that inconsistency as legally required, which is the VAF zoning controls. The unfortunate part is this all took 2 years and probably cost the applicant $250,000 between preparing the EIR and paying mortgage and insurance and taxes on this derelict building that sat there all this time. It's unfortunate the city hasn't obtained the redevelopment of this site up to now, but here we are. So tonight, you're being asked to recommend to the city council because of these other changes and amendments to the city code. This is now a recommendation. Last time you approved the project. Now it's just a recommendation to the city council to approve the project. In answer to Commissioner Latas's questions, the city received correspondence from the Water Management District that says there's actually a surplus of water on the site because of the fact that the restaurant's going away and hotel rooms use a lot less water than restaurants. So there's about 1 acre foot of surplus water credit that will exist on this site after the approval. The safety condition is the sidewalk, as staff mentioned. There's a telephone pole in the middle of the sidewalk. Not our telephone pole, not our sidewalk, but the project is going to provide easement access or additional property for the city to go around. We received a letter late this afternoon from the opponent's noise consultant suggesting that there would be a significant impact if an extension to the sound deflection wall is not made to the northeast around the corner. Mr. Schmidt showed the photograph with the red line. At your last hearing or after the appeal was filed, the applicant had already agreed to do that. So it was found as the EIR not to be necessary. So it's not needed to mitigate noise impacts, but the applicant is trying to make the opponent happy and has agreed and will agree. And we're happy to add a condition that says that noise barrier will be extended around the corner as was illustrated on the map. So between now and hopefully the city council, that condition can be added and that resolves the last issue raised by the opponent's consultant. Other than that, I don't want to bore you going through the whole darn thing over again And so if you have any questions, I'll answer them to the best of our ability. Our architect is on the Zoom, I think, to answer questions if you have any. But in answer to Commissioner Brassfield's question, the California Building Code has a water retention, detention, and runoff standard, and it requires that the water be retained on site and then discharged at a certain rate. And so this project will have to comply with that new code, which of course the current property doesn't. Everything runs off. So this will, and there's less coverage as staff mentioned. So this will improve the drainage situation on Fremont Street, not exacerbate it. So I probably said this to you 2 years ago, but being an almost lifelong resident of Monterey since I was 7, we moved here. This is a wonderful project for the city that is desperately needed in that location. Will hopefully encourage others to similarly improve their property. So if you have any other questions, we're here to answer. Otherwise, we would respectfully request that you approve the project and add a condition about the extension of the wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? No. Well, I don't know. I guess we're into comments. Does the with the opponent? Yes. Would you like to have a word?
Yes.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Jeff Pack. I'm with Edward Pack Associates. I'm the acoustical consultant for the appellant. Chris, if you could bring up that the graphic showing the before and after one from the DEIR 4.416. It's in the DEIR. So I just want to state that we appreciate the willingness to add that what we call a flanking barrier along that east property line. But I just want to let you know that actually that barrier is necessary for compliance with CEQA because the removal of the motel will open up the view from the very end of the motel buildings, there's 2 apartment units that will have a greater view to the street, therefore be more noise impacted, and I've calculated by up to 6 decibels of an increase, which is over the allowable limit for a less than significant impact. So that's why that flanking barrier is necessary to shield that. And where you notice it is the little dots that show the before and after noise exposures right at the end of that purple line. You can see that beforehand, the sound levels are at 56, but then afterwards it's at 54. But that doesn't make any sense because there's no barrier there anymore when the motel goes away. So that raised a red flag on the computation of those noise levels. So that's what drove some of this. So if you go back to the graphic that you showed earlier from my report at the end of the document. So it's going to be important to make sure that that flanking barrier that's shown on that by that red line coming up. Okay, right there. Yeah, so you can see when that motel is removed, you can see that big gap between the end of the blue line and the back of the State Farm building. A bunch of noise is going to spill right through that opening and impact the very end of that apartment building. So let's get that barrier in there, make sure that's done properly. And the other thing is, I haven't seen a document yet regarding noise impacts to the hotel, which is part of a general plan thing. So to make sure you comply with the noise element of the general plan, the noise study addressing traffic noise impacts to the motel for the guest spaces in relation to the Title 24 requirements should be part of that use permit. That's all I have to say at this point. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for, no, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment.
I guess,
My name is Layla Maroon. I'm one of the owners of the 13-unit apartment complex right next door. We're opposed to the project and feel the city has gone out of their way to allow non-compliances to the applicants and try to push through the project to the point that instead of the applicant meeting the requirements are being changed to meet the applicant's proposal. We don't consider these clarifications, but changes. The parking requirements are not being met both in the number of parking spaces required nor the size. We constantly have cars parking on our property next door in front of signs that say no parking towaway zone, even if there isn't a fairgrounds event going on. We also noted earlier this year, a 40-foot semi truck parked on Fremont Street servicing the De Anza Inn with cones placed to take up 4 parking spaces. De Anza Inn management stated they receive truck supplies deliveries more often than weekly. And the handicap spaces can't be used by all. There's 42 spaces. There's no spaces allocated for any of the employees that work at the property. The height limitations were extensively evaluated and documented in the North Fremont specific plan, so there will be no project that is out of character with the surrounding area. This includes height limitations that are exceeded by over 10 feet with this proposed project, which will stick out like a sore thumb. The nearby De Anza Inn is not a comparable property as they have significant setbacks and a larger lot. The city has also weighed the story pole requirements, even though there are viable alternatives to set this up. The city of Carmel has recently had story poles erected for a proposed 4-story building, all within the lot lines with no guide wires in any part of the sidewalks. We also submitted a proposal where the flag lines can be attached to equipment lifts without any guide wires. Therefore, there's no question that there are safe proposals to do this. rather than to keep the public from knowing what is planned until it's too late. The city is also spending over 500,000 of taxpayers' money to give to the applicants as a tax credit, instead of using it for much needed city improvements that would benefit the local community. This property is not suitable for a 42-room, 45-foot high hotel. But for a 35-foot hotel with enough parking for hotel customers, employees, staff, and properly sized for delivery vehicles with standard, not compact cars as required by the city ordinances. There is also a requirement to be sensitive to the neighbors. All these allowed non-compliances are the opposite of this and provided for the benefit of the applicant and visitors and at the cost of the local neighborhood. We believe the project is detrimental to our property and the local neighborhood. And we have wanted to have our other consultants and attorneys speak at this as well, but there was way too little notice provided for them to be available to do so. Thank you.
Is there additional public comment? No. Okay, so we can close the public comment part and get to,
We'll want to check and see if there's a public comment online or anyone else, members of the public in the chambers that want to speak on the item.
I can go ahead and remind the public how to join briefly. Once again, to join the meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Once again, today's webinar ID is 161-990-8039. There's currently one attendee online with their hand raised. And I can go ahead and allow them to
let's
speak.
hear 'em.
Zoom user, I'll go ahead and allow you to talk. Zoom
Hello?
needs-
Hello, hello.
Hello. Hi. I just was wondering, oh, can you hear me well? So,
We can hear you.
okay. So I was just wondering, I'm a neighbor. I live in the apartment, the Maroon apartment complex. So we were just wondering, if we could touch base on the asbestos and the mercury and all of that, like when they're going to be rebuilding the property, if they're going to be rebuilding the property, how that will affect the neighbors.
And that's it.
Yes. It just feels unsafe to expose a bunch of kids and older people to a bunch of asbestos and stuff like that. It just doesn't seem safe. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you for your comment.
Chris, could you step in there?
We'll finish out the public comment and then we can address questions, Ruth.
There are no other hands raised online.
No hands raised. Okay, so Chris time.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The purpose of the mitigation measure and under the hazards and hazardous materials section is to require that the applicant do testing for these various chemicals and then abatement pursuant to specific, I believe we've referenced in the EIR a specific standard under I'm not sure of it off the top of my head, I apologize, but a local health and safety code, a state health and safety code, so that when all of that is removed, it's done in a controlled and contained way. I'm familiar with how it's done, personally familiar with how it's done at like a home. Usually that area is covered with plastic and completely sealed. There's venting with fans and filters. And so all of the hazardous materials contained during its removal. And so
And
that's
guy-
the intent
And
of,
guys in spacesuits doing it all.
there are professionals that do this, correct? And so that's the intent of that mitigation measure, is to ensure that there is no exposure to the surrounding neighborhood.
And just adding on, this is a very typical issue in demolition and modification of older buildings. It's highly regulated by the Monterey Bay Air Resources Control Board. You have to get specific permits and complete the remediation as required.
Thank you, Kim.
So my name is Diane
Wait,
Maroon.
let's-
Just once.
We've closed the public comments, so you'd have to reopen the public.
Closed, I'm sorry. No more public?
Did the chair formally close the public hearing portion of the
I
meeting?
was asking the Zoom guys over here, if
Well,
there's anybody else.
There are no hands raised online.
No, okay. Okay. I can reopen the public comment to the applicant. But I'm gonna have to open it to everyone else too.
It's just, so my name's Diane Maroon and I'm part of the family that owns the apartments behind the project that is proposed. And in the past, we've had another property where construction was being completed across the street from us, and there were certain construction hours that were not where construction was done outside of the hours. And when we called in, there were it was basically an answering machine and nothing was done about repeated violations. So I would like to know if construction is done outside the scope that is allowed, what type of requirements and regulations or penalties will the applicant be held to if those are not abided by? That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public would like to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom?
I don't see any hands raised. Do any of the members in
No
the
hands
chambers like
raised.
to speak? I don't think so.
Okay, so going to bring it back to.
we'll ask that you formally close the public hearing.
What?
We'll ask that you formally close the public hearing.
Okay, we're closing the public hearing. And we're going forward. Comments from the crew. Sandy?
Sure, I'll go ahead. When this came up 2 years ago, it seemed at the time that this would be a really great way to at least build one new facility on North Fremont, where there had been 3 proposed and had not made the cut, either from residents or from the Planning Commission. And this one seemed like a really viable one, and with some objections from the next door neighbor, this has resulted in, I don't want to say overkill, but a 600-page environmental impact report and a revision of the visitor accommodation facility versus specific plan hierarchy, and a revised statement of off-street parking, loading standards, and certifying an environmental impact report. And all of these seem to meet the requirements of a successful project. So with the addition of adding a sound barrier wall to the use permit of the 4 resolutions before us, with the addition of that condition, I would be wholeheartedly in favor of approving each one of the resolutions presented.
Mike?
We are a community. There's give and take in any society that is going to be successful. We have waited, those of us that live at that end of the city, for someone to come forward and initiate some nice construction. And I want to compliment this design for that purpose. The design of the parking lot, it's not what we typically see behind a box. They put thought into it. And I appreciate that they're going to be doing it, removing a lot of soil and replacing some of it. But I think that there is one conflict, and this is the conflict between the specific plan and the VAF. When we went through the specific plan, we had images put into that thought process of what the people that live there wanted to see along North Fremont. And I will say that this design does not meet that expectation that was created. But the VAF trumps specific plan. And we will have to live with that. On the side of the positive sides, we are getting one of the things that we have been asking for. The only thing better would be to take travel lodges, some of those motels, and put a new facility in there, because we've been looking for an anchor site. And this is going to create that image. This is going to be the image of what other business owners should consider along North Fremont. The CEQA process is difficult, required by the state. I always thought it was a minimum of 250,000 words in 2 years. That probably going to be showing about that time and quantity here. But I think there's a lot of mitigation that went in there to concern some of the concerns that people had on this project. And I have to say, I personally think that they've met that measure of concern in this process, even to the point of extending that noise wall. I remember when I was tearing down and building a house here on a peninsula years ago, and a little old lady came over holding her teacup, complaining about our hammering, the noise problem with our hammering. Well, back then it would just smile at her and continue hammering. But we don't do that anymore. We look at these things and try to make it a little easier. But once again, as a part of a community, it's give and take. If we're going to get new construction on North Fremont, we're going to have some of the construction noises. There's no way around it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Bob?
Yeah, I agree with Mike and Sandy. I think this is an excellent start to bringing back North Fremont. It's a beginning to hopefully that will result in a much broader process there. A 1940s hotel being replaced by something that's going to be a little bit more modern, I think will be a real benefit for that part of the neighborhood. And I think here's, the work that was done. I mean, I think they've covered quite substantially all the issues that have been brought up. So I'm very much in favor of this project, and I hope it can go forward quickly.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm also in favor of this project. I agree with the three commissioners' statements. I just wanted to say for the Maroons that it's an unfortunate part of owning property right next to the VAF zoning, is that this part of the city is going to see development, and also with the upcoming changes in the housing rules, that we're upzoning a lot of the city to accommodate higher buildings and more. So unfortunately, a lot of neighbors are going to be impacted by all this construction. And so I'm sorry for the inconvenience this is bound to cause, but I think the applicant really has gone to a lot of extra effort here to make this project legitimate and It certainly has been well vetted. The CEQA process is very exhaustively thorough, and this big pile of paper, hope that was recycled paper. That's all I can say.
The city doesn't do it that way.
But I don't want to make, fun of it, but it's, it's really a very thorough process, and it, as the applicant said, hopefully this does reduce litigation for everybody because it's so thorough. And so, I'm in support of this project.
Well, I don't think there's much that I can add to what's been said so far. I live in that neighborhood and there's a lot that I had to get used to when I moved into it. It's very dense. It's very dense and we kind of live on top of each other. After reviewing the packet that was sent out for this hearing today, I don't think I saw anything that changed my mind about how I felt about this project 2 years ago. I am in support of it.
Thank you. I'm also in support of it. I've been in support of it since I think I was on the ARC when we looked at it a long while ago, a long while ago. And then once before with this commission. And I hope that this thing gets built. Someone gonna call me a motion?
Well, should
I'll
we
make
make four
actually,
separate motions?
4 separate motions.
Okay. Terry?
Okay. Boy, I don't have all the doc. Does anybody have
Okay.
the 4 resolutions in front of them?
Okay.
Yeah.
So resolution number 1 was to recommend, I move to recommend that the city council approve use permit UP 20-02227 for the 2101 North Fremont Street Hotel project to demolish an existing 18-room hotel, restaurant, and parking lot and construct a new 42-room hotel and parking lot and off-street loading space. This motion comes with one condition, and that is to add a sound barrier wall at the north border,
Northeast corner.
northwest border,
East.
at the northeast border.
I'll second that.
Okay.
And where does this, do we have to add anything about this page 180 of the FEIR, changing the language, or is that just going to happen before the
No,
city council
that's
hears it?
2, 3, it's.
Should be with the
4.
4th resolution.
Okay.
So it'll come later.
The EIR is.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Aye.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Latassa.
Yes.
That motion carries with a vote of 6.
Okay, so we need to have a
All right.
discussion about number 2.
All right. Resolution number 2. Resolution number 2. I move to recommend city council adoption of a resolution amending the North Fremont specific plan to clarify that the specific plan is not the general plan. Specific plan policies do not apply to visitor accommodation facility zoned lots, and VAF zone lots are subject to city charter requirements.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any comment on the motion? No. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please? Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Fletcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Latassa.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with a vote of 6.
Okay, so where's number 3? How about, let's talk about number 3,
All right, you want a motion?
please.
All right, resolution number 3. I move that to recommend city council adopt an ordinance amending chapter 38 of the City of Monterey Code related to visitor accommodation facility parking standards 38-36A, off-street parking and loading standards 38-115, and reduced parking for other uses 38-117.
Which was actually number 2.
Is that resolution number two?
That was number 2.
It'll be the third. It's resolution number 3.
Okay.
It may be in a different order than noted in the staff report, but as long as
Excellent.
they're all referenced separately, it's fine.
Okay, so let's have a
I'll second that one too.
second that one too. Okay. Can we have a roll call on that motion, please?
Chair Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Fletcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Latassa.
Yes.
Motion carries with a vote of 6.
And the final resolution, I hope it's number 4. I move. Let's see,
Is there a 4?
is there a number 4? Yeah.
Where's the language of number?
Yes, so the fourth one will be the last resolution included in the packet. So this is for the recommendation to the city council to certify the environmental impact report.
Right. I move that the Planning Commission of the City of Monterey recommend to the City Council, 1, certify the environmental impact report, 2, adopt environmental findings pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, and 3, adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the 2101 North Fremont Street Hotel project.
And this is the one that would include the typographical correction condition. If you wanted to add that,
Was that on page 500?
180
Oh.
of the environmental impact report.
All right, and a condition attached to this resolution is to correct the typo on page 180 of the environmental impact report.
I'll second that one.
Second by Mr. Latassa. Any discussion of the motion? No. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Latassa.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with a vote of 6.
Okay.
You can go, Tony.
And Mr. Lombardo can leave now. Okay, commissioner comments. Last time we had a comment, somebody was going to be absent from the next meeting.
Yes, I'm still not going to be able to attend the December 12th Planning Commission.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to be able to discuss at some time the differences between the specific plan and the VAF regarding North Fremont specific plan at some point?
I'll just say in terms of our work program right now, I would say in the first quarter, we're going to be focused on the adoption of the housing element, the safety element, and the land use element. And then we will be focused on implementing 45 housing element programs to comply with state law, including rezoning. It's not as a high a priority right now based on our work program. Clearly, you could indicate that it's one of your priorities and we can, not right now, you can't, but we could, come back and look at that in more detail with the work program. But our current resourcing and staffing is really going to be focused on the housing element in 2024.
I got a couple of phone calls regarding this issue and I said I would bring it up because when we went through that year-long
instead of
process.
Talking about it, if that's something that the chair would like to agendize for a future meeting, we can do that.
Okay, because and the second thing is, once again, when we get a big project like this, it's an awful lot of reading between Friday night and Tuesday. So if we could, even if you could give us part of it, like that 600-page document, an extra day would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I do have one other comment. So you weren't here last time, Kim, but the the new state law about, I think it's Senate Bill 272, city has to prepare a sea level rise plan. And of course, we're waiting for the, the strategy is to sort of get the coastal plan finished first. What's the status of the coastal plan?
Well, Levi and I've both been working on that. Do you want to give an update? Okay, and I can add to it.
Yes, so we're continuing to work on the getting the implementation plan and policies in line with our consultant with Rincon. And working through getting a draft LCP document to submit to the Coastal Commission that would include, obviously already have baseline studies done for sea level rise and vulnerability, but we're also looking to update that through a local assistance grant with the Coastal Commission to have a new sea level rise analysis and vulnerability analysis prepared as part of that.
The question really more is not so much about the sea level rise part of the coastal plan, but just when is that going to get done? Because the idea was we've got to get that done first, then we're going to tackle the bigger issue.
Yeah, I think maybe I can jump in here a little bit because it goes back with history. We've made substantial progress on the LCP. The challenge is our one staff member that's working on advanced planning, basically for the city based on our current resources, is working on the housing element and the general plan and the EIR full-time. And so we are hoping to have that adopted by April 15th, which is required. And then we will, we are working on it. We work every 2 weeks. We're working with our consultant. It's just less of a priority because of the statutory mandates.
What would be your guess about what would be just a ballpark timing of the LCP, going to the Coastal Commission?
You know what I'd like to do is maybe we can come back with you with a schedule and look
Okay.
at how it fits
Yeah,
in
I'm
with
just-
everything.
I'm just curious in general. So, and I know the staff member that was working on that is also working on a new baby, I think. Didn't Fernanda have a baby?
Different staff members, so I'm not going to start remembering. But yes, Fernanda's going to be joining us back. So
That's great. How's she doing?
she's doing wonderful
Good,
and beautiful addition to her family.
Planning office update. Please.
Thank you. Yes, so as noted in the agenda packet, you'll see that the cannabis ordinance was passed on second reading at the last council meeting. And then also just want to give a quick update on the tentative agenda for the December 12th and kind of get a idea of, and Commissioner Latassa already mentioned he would not be present. I wanted to make sure that we would have a quorum. So it's kind of want to get an idea if there's any other commissioners that are not going to be able to attend that meeting.
I'm here.
You're here.
I'm
What
here.
date is that?
It'll be December 12th.
Be here.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Wonderful.
Cool.
All right. Thank you. And if that changes, please let myself or Erica know. As you'll see in the tentative schedule, so we have 2 projects scheduled for that meeting, but excitingly enough, we also have the Cal Poly landscape architecture class that will also be coming to present to the commission their student project that they've been working on over the last semester. So this is a separate group from the previous Cal Poly group that you heard from. So it'll be a different kind of project scope and kind of their landscape architecture class specifically identified to cultural and environments. So it'll be a little bit of a different context in what they're presenting. But they'll be here for the afternoon session for the December 12th meeting. We would invite the commission to show up if they wanted to 30 minutes prior to the meeting. So at 3:30, they'll have some visual aids, some presentation boards that maybe the commission is interested in viewing before they do give their larger presentations to the commission. But so that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question on that. How are we going to implement or utilize some of the ideas that the first Cal Poly group gave to us? I mean, they had some wonderful concepts on like Bonifacio Plaza and many others.
Yeah, so all of these student projects are just kind of jumping off points and conversation starters for whenever we kind of review or make updates to, for instance, the Bonifacio Plaza is within the downtown specific plan. So, it's used as kind of incubator type ideas for whenever the staff or the city gets around to making changes to those plans or whenever we have development proposals for those areas, then it gets kind of worked into regulating documents at that point.
Okay, that's it. With no more information.
Thank
we're
you, Mike.